and welcome for another exciting talk. Data is everywhere nowadays, and there is a lot of traps when we don't know how to properly, dig into that data. And today we have a senior business intelligence consultant, Łukasz, that is going to talk us through what are the typical traps that you can, find when in your BI deployments. So, Łukasz, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. I'm Łukasz, and today I'm going to be telling you about typical traps of BI deployments. However, you could consider that also other IT deployments in general, because many these types of mistakes I'm going to be presenting to you today are happening all the way in all IT projects. So I hope it's going to help the other teams too. And today I'm presenting Lingaro. I'm working for our consulting company. We are like a worldwide company, so we, providing 24/7 across the world. So if you're interested in any other information about our company, join the conference like tomorrow. Physically, we're going to be there, so you can ask any questions if you want. Now, about the topic itself and what we're going to be talking about. So I'm going to focus on like 5 stages. So first, budgeting, what can go wrong at the very beginning, responsibilities, this is like the critical part, requirements and documentation, data sources and performance, because those two are also usually connected, and visuals and adoption. Now, you may ask yourself, why? I mean, why me? Why it's me telling you this? So basically, I can give you some brief overview what I was doing. So before I joined BI business like around 10 years ago, I was deploying ERP systems, meaning that at this time already I had to have ability to talk with the business, to talk with the, let's say, CEO and the operational worker and try to, let's say, manage the conflicts between those. Then I was also working with ETLs. I was cleaning the data, working as a SQL developer. So I was more into the data, but I was also working with the business. So at some point I was solely on the role of business analyst, meaning that I was, gathering requirement, talking to the business, talking to IT, also trying to make everyone understand each other. And then I was BI tech lead, the head of BI also. So, I was leading the team. I was leading the all analytics in one company. And actually the role you're seeing me now is my typical role I had for many, many years, basically like a senior BI consultant. So I'm consulting the client, gathering requirements and providing visuals. So I'm actually passing most of the stages that I'm going to be presenting to you today. Now, about the budgeting at the first place. Usually when I think about budgeting, it's during the project. So it's like, estimates of the complexity, how much time it's going to be taking to developers. But what I want to start with at the very beginning is like an example, what can happen even before the decision of BI system purchase can happen. So imagine that I had this example. I was working with a big producer of construction materials, and they had really terrible mess in the data. So basically imagine that every single month, like a bunch of people had to gather together and they were working on their own Excels. Then they were sending it by email to one person responsible for merging it all together to one huge PowerPoint presentation, having at the end 64 slides. So imagine on one side how undigestible it was. On the other side, imagine that you're managing the company, right? And you want to make a decision. If something goes wrong, you want to make these decisions as fast as you can. So if you're getting the data like 2.5 or 3 weeks after they are prepared, and this is the amount of time that it took them. Imagine this, like the month ended, 2.5 weeks later, they got the data. So this delay can cost you a lot of money. So basically manual work, which is saved, and also like a time costs are a huge benefits of BI purchase in general. But what happens in the budgeting during the actual projects? So on one side, clients tend to underestimate. And what I mean by this, we were working as a whole team of developers with our client, and one of our stakeholders came to us and said, guys, I have I have very urgent stuff, but it's small, it's just a 5-minute task. So, I took a look at that, and so that doesn't seem to be that easy. So I went back to our project manager and said, listen, it seems like too big task to do. So what do we do? Because, well, we cannot focus only on this. We have things to do in the sprint, and this can jeopardize all our work we're going to be doing. So he decided, okay, so let's do it this way. We're going to create a separate ticket just for that, and then we'll see how much time it takes. So imagine that after the sprint, work on just this small task took me 1.5 days just to realize actually that the work needed for this is 5 days or even more. So, but then at the very end of the sprint, we had also gathering with the stakeholders, and this guy were saying, why didn't you prepare it? It was so small. And we tried to explain that, even if there's somebody from the business side just seeing just one number in the table, the complexity of calculations behind it can be really, really big. But, basically this is something, sometimes you have to basically explain this stuff to the business because, well, for them, it seems to be simple. But he was pushing like too much. And at some point, our IT director said, well, if we have on the business side such an experienced person who know how to do such a complex task in 5 minutes, let's let him to do like a workshop for everybody, and he's going to show us how to do it. So it was kind of fun moment because at this point, our stakeholder decided that he can actually wait a bit more. Now, we have to also, as developers on our side, we have to be also honest, like we lowered the effort too. So if you're going to just come to a developer just working on dashboards and ask about the complexity, and this person is going to tell you, I know, like 10 days, you should count 15. I mean, it's not like official numbers. It's on my experience that in many cases, the communication takes around 1/3 of the project. Even I had a situation when I was talking with one of our developers in my team, and it was his purely development time. And I would ask, how much time did you spend on the communication with the client today? And he was saying, yeah, well, I mean, that's nothing. That's just a couple of emails. So I said, okay, let's take a look at this. And we took, okay, you had 9 emails just for this project, just for this client today. And he said, yeah, but it's not a big deal. It's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And I said, yeah, but this one, you were explaining quite a lot of things. So it was probably 20, 25 minutes. So yeah, we started counting. At the end, he realized it's like, oh my God, I mean, I spent like 50 or 55 minutes writing emails only. And this was the time technically just for development. So be aware that whenever you're doing the actual budgeting, and be aware of the communication of complexity of communication involved. Now, the main topics we are dealing here with, we wanna cover a couple of issues that people are facing during BI deployments. And imagine that such a survey was done, and the users of the BI systems, they were asked what, in their opinion, are the main causes of BI deployment failures. And number 1 was slow query performance, then lack of user engagement, then we had poor data governance and low data quality. Those two are kind of connected, and so on. So imagine if during this presentation, I could show you how we can deal with 5 of those. So the first 4 and the last one cannot handle our data volume. So let me show you how we can deal with those. Now, responsibilities. And this is the critical part. And actually, you have to be aware who is responsible for what in the project. And let me give you another example. I was involved in a big project with the pharmaceutical industry, and we were about to integrate 9 data sources into one huge data repository for the client. So we had on one side like ETL part, like data cleaning part, and also, after preparing the table, the visual to prepare the actual visual for the client. Unfortunately, at some point, technical officer on their side, on the client side, he came to us and said, guys, something is terribly wrong. I mean, you must have processed data terribly wrong because the numbers we are seeing in this, final table you gave us doesn't seem right. And, we started, going back and forth, having meetings, calls, what's going on. And then it appeared, which was really surprising, that the data samples we were giving, and we were working on these data samples for a while, like to do the process, to do the data processing, they were outdated. So imagine that around 30% of the ETL flows we've been doing were not to be utilized. They had to be remade because they forgot that the system version changed in between. So then, well, we said to the client, guys, I mean, you said it's our responsibility, but now it's really important, like, let's sit together, let's decide who's responsible for what. And this is our big issue, because we should have done it already. You know, we had a good relations with client. This is what also happens a lot, that you have a very good relation with the client, so you don't want to do anything wrong, or, you know, basically just based on the relations, but really assign responsibilities. And the way you can do it is actually using RACI matrix. So for those of you who are not aware, RACI matrix stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So responsible is the person doing the task. Accountable is a person who's going to accept the task at the end. Consulted is kind of a business matter expert who's going to be consulted, has some knowledge needed, and informed, this person has to be informed about the progress. So we can imagine that in case of the planning timeline, let's say, the project manager is the person who's going to be planning, but he has to consult, and this should have happened in this case, which didn't. Not only BI developers as us, but also data steward, like, you know, about the complexity of data sources. And then at the end, business owner should accept the actual complexity. And also, apart from responsibilities at the very beginning of the project, it's also important to remember to make business aware that they are responsible for the part of UIT. So in another project, I had a situation when all development was fine, and, you know, the first version of the reports were delivered. However, at some point, client came up and said, guys, there are some errors here and there, but there were just a couple of feedbacks, so we were thinking we are good to go for production. And then clients, like the stakeholders, they're really surprised that they were supposed to check something, because they said, no, it doesn't look fine, something went wrong, but they saw it on the production. And we are saying, guys, but you are people, you had some time prepared for UIT, you should be doing it. And, you know, again, like, we had to explain that UIT on the technical side lies on developers, but verifying some numbers, looking at the ergonomics of work, the dashboard is designed, and so on. So whether they like it during using it, it's on the business. So imagine that if we do those two stuff, we can actually manage poor data governance, because this happened in the first project I mentioned, and also low data quality, because if you're having poor data governance, this is inevitably leading to low data quality. Now, next thing is going to be requirements and documentation. And another situation I was having in case of this project is that we were supposed to do the integration of 5 APIs. And actually, in this project, everything went wrong. So from the very beginning, like somebody from the sales went to the client, and then they said, okay, we need some integration of API. So the sales guy asked one of our consultants, hey, you were doing some API, right? How much time did it take you? Oh, I don't know, like 3-4 weeks. So based on that, I said, okay, so yeah, like 3-4 weeks, multiply by 5, that's it. So this was done terribly wrong at the very beginning. So the client was assuming that we're going to finish very fast. And as you see, like below on this Gantt chart, you could see that actually API 1 took us almost 3 months of work. So obviously, we had several issues with the client, because he was asking, is it delivered? Why it's not yet ready, and so on. So we had to explain that basically that needs more work. And actually, after finishing first 3 APIs, we had to engage one more developer to do the job, because other than that, we would be way above the timeline. Also, what you have to be aware of, that when you're writing the sign of conditions, this is very critical, that you have to consciously do that, because we had a sentence that, so the data in our report is going to be exactly equal to the user interface of the integrated solutions. And to give you an example also from this project, we were integrating Google Analytics 4. Now, something happened that in our report and the GA4 on their webpage, we were seeing different results. So obvious conclusion was we did something wrong in the report, but that was not the case. We did some digging, we did the check, and what appeared at the end is that actually the data that you were seeing on the Google Analytics on the webpage were different than given back by the Google API. So it was very specific to this version of Google Analytics. So we went back to Google, to say, guys, you have a bug in here. But obviously, the client was blaming us because we were supposed to design the solution that's going to basically work. And you'll see that if it happens, it's delaying the project timeline. So it is critical to remember to avoid such situations. Now, on the other example, this is going to be like very positive example in this case. We had a different story with a very big logistics company. And I was working with this project all the way from the beginning to the end. And when they were talking with me at the very beginning, they said, listen, this is really complex logic behind it. This is one of our main logistical process. So, I mean, you need to meet with all our experts to understand that. And this is what actually happened. So, we had, several hours of meetings, couple of days of meetings, then like even weeks of data modeling, which was done with BPMN. Like for those of you who are not aware, like BPMN is business process modeling notation. So this is just a sample example like below. So it's kind of modeling the way the data flows. So, where it starts, when you write something to the database, when you make decisions and so on. So the idea also behind it is that when you make such a process is visual properly, then you can agree with the business. So is the business understanding and the IT understanding of some particular process is the same? And somebody could say, you wasted such a long time just for analysis. So I could say I partially agree because yes, we spend a lot of time on analysis. But thanks to that, we had totally flawless development. So we had no issues with developing this particular solution. We had a big success in this project because we exactly understood what we were supposed to deliver. And this went really, really well. Now about data sources and performance. And this is another example that users came back to us and said, we just want a small table. And this is, honestly, this is the sentence I really hate because usually it creates problems. Of course, me as a BI person, I wanted to suggest, listen, like maybe you could do it as a visual, but I said, yeah, but our manager wants a table and it's going to be small. So don't worry, like it's like 17 rows and some thousands of 17 columns and some thousands of rows. So not a big deal. But then they came back and say, oh, yeah, listen, that's not going to be daily data. Could we go for weekly? Yeah, or maybe monthly. Oh, we forgot just a couple of columns. Could you add it? And, I was asking, okay, so how many columns you forgot? 15. So, I was adding this content into it. And like several times, I tried to explain that this is not going to work properly. And at the end, you can imagine we were stuck with the huge table having 51 columns and 60 million rows. And not surprisingly, when it was deployed, users started coming back to me asking, hey, like what's going on? I mean, the table is long, it's loading so long. And I said, guys, but this is loading so long because there's no proper aggregation done in here. The amount of data is way too big. So basically you should be aware of that. And we tried to explain it to you like multiple times, this is way too big to work properly. Then they started saying that we have a performance issues. And again, we had to explain, yeah, well, you do because you have 8 analysts who are downloading this table monster every day and trying to figure out what to do with this in Excel. And apart from these people, we have between 70 and 80 normal users using reports on a daily basis, trying just to normally use it. So, obviously it was causing some issues. So then we had to, after some time after deployment, we had to have a gathering with their manager and explain again, all the issues are coming from the wrong attitude from the very beginning. So then we finally agreed that their data were moved to the cloud, at least part of those. Then we divided these views. We made the proper aggregations. And guess what? Like when you split this terrible, like huge amount of data into smaller pieces, it seemed to be very easy to digest. The report was faster. We made it visual. It just went totally fine. So when somebody is saying that there is a slow query performance issue, and also with the error that cannot handle our data volumes, I'm always asking, okay, are you selecting your data? Or are you basically gathering everything you got in one place and trying to process that? Because almost no machine, no architecture can cope with this. So you should always be aware that proper splitting the data is a critical thing in here. Now, about the last part, where adoption goes wrong. And in many cases, what users think is that, their view is like, oh, we bought such a bad software, and like such unreadable reports were prepared. So actually, we are honestly facing the lack of adoption. Nobody wants to use this report, and we can see it, on the server statistics. So can we please go back to Excel? And, I would say, I get it, but this is not the root cause of the problem. The reality is that at the very beginning, bad requirements were given. Also, maybe there was lack of flexibility on the business side. Maybe the business analyst didn't know how to handle that. But at the end of this process, wrong visuals were prepared. And I'm going to give you an example in a sec. And because you're facing like wrong visuals, you have unreadable reports, that's true, and you have a lack of adoption, which doesn't mean that you should go to Excel. You basically should go to the very beginning and rework what you want to see and how you want to see it. So today I'm not going to be focusing on the the type of the visuals you should do in a particular cases because it's way too big. I was doing such a lecture in the other conference, but like just tell me, like you look at this, and do your eyes hurt? Because in my case, I mean, for me it's not digestible, and I had such type of a table prepared for the client, and they were trying to explain to me, oh, listen, yeah, we did this because we want to see whether something goes wrong or not. So the red is bad and the green is fine, and it's all fine. And I said, yeah, but what's the difference between -2 and -60? So, you're not seeing the difference. So still, you have to read the particular numbers, which is killing the idea of the heat map. Or basically, if you do the proper visuals, even bar chart, that would help a lot. So when I'm talking about the visuals, I'm obviously aware that, we have 88% of Excel users analyzing the data in the companies. But I'm always like making a joke that don't buy a car based on your bicycle experience. So imagine that you go to a BMW and you jump in the car and take a look at this and then talk to the seller, say, hey, like, yeah, where's the chain? And the seller is gonna reply like, what do you mean by chain? Oh, because when I was riding my bicycle, I had a steering wheel, the seat is nice, but I'm missing the chain. And, it can sound funny or even, ridiculous in this case, but imagine that like we as the BI teams, we are facing multiple situations where we have users coming to us and asking to prepare visuals based on their Excel experience, which is not the case. I mean, then they should be in a conversation with us, because this is also our responsibility, of course, as a BI, to reply and to say what's going to be the proper visual. So we have to gather what the users needs, what they analyze, make a proper visual. Of course, the business should be open to the changes, and then explain you why, and I would say enjoy the adoption. So in this case, if you do it properly, if you really fulfill like the needs of the business with your visual, you're going to be done with the issue lack of user engagement. This should be done, and this was, as you remember, one of the critical issues during deployments. So to wrap up, first, estimate the budget on analyzed complexity. So no rough estimates, no something like 2 APIs, so I just multiply. You should really spend proper amount of time on analyzing every single project that you're approaching. Then assign the project roles at the very beginning. So if you agreed on something, then you talk to the stakeholders, talk to like technical people, business people. So we all agree who's responsible for what, prepare resi matrix, you can use other tools for that, and that's fine. Now then you can model the process, for instance. That's one way to do it, so that you know exactly what the business was thinking when they are explaining you the complexity. Verify if the data source is up to date, whether you are connecting to the production test, what's the version, and so on. And at the very end, use the proper visuals to increase the adoption. Because if the business is going to be engaged, also like involved into testing, and they're going to be also liking the visuals and taking the best out of it, basically this is all they need, and you're going to be both enjoying very good deployment. So if anyone has some feedback, I'm happy to listen. And here you can see the QR code to give me some feedback about my presentation. And eventually, if there are any questions whatsoever, Chairman, you can then let me know and we can discuss.
All right. Thank you very much for this amazing presentation. We have a couple of questions here. I think the first one is this one. What is your rule of thumb for adding a buffer time to a project? From my experience, is usually 20% to the original estimates.
Yeah, from mine too. I can agree with this. Because like one thing is that you are considering the complexity of the communication, as I was saying. But usually we have to take such a buffer, and usually it was around 20%, because basically anything can go wrong, and it's not just the things that I mentioned, but also something that is not expected. So I would say that's a very good estimate. That's going to be around 20%. I agree.
And there's another question here, which is, what business analysis techniques are you using to eliminate correct data related requirements, or related to the requirements, I guess? And how do you present the data requirements to developers team? In what form?
Well, when I'm modeling, in most cases I was using a BPM, and as I was telling, because I used it in a various ways. So on one side, I was using it. It was originally designed like for a process modeling, but I also tried sometimes to present graphically also to the IT team, and like, guys, this is the way we're going to be seeing the flow of the data. So it's not the process per se, as you understand that, but it's more like a modeling also the way the infrastructure and the system is working. So I tried to use like for the both sides. So sometimes some can say you could use UML for this. I mean, you could use various techniques, but this is what I was mainly using.
Awesome. So David says, best lecture of the day so far. Thank you. And Matthew says, great lecture. Thanks. These are things that we also share here. This was a fantastic lesson. I also see here Mihal also has a question. Let me see. There's a question. The question is, any best practices on how to push stakeholders to be precise in the requirements description as possible?
Yeah, I would say that's a fun question, because I would say that you really need to work on being patient with your clients, because I feel like this maybe explaining also that we are in the same team. It's not like the business is against IT, because this is what like happens a lot of times. So I always try to have some relation with the stakeholders and, like just have some chit chat with them at the very beginning, and then explain the role. So guys, we are meeting here, but we will be using we'll be needing you at this stage of the project and that stage of the project. So I appreciate if you, can help my developers or me if we have any issues. And also trying to also explain, the importance of one UAT and the importance of that they are really precise at the very beginning, because when we define the solution at the very beginning, well, this defines the ending, right? So this is also the part I told you about the bad visual. So you have to agree on a couple of things. So I believe there is, I don't know, maybe there are some psychological tricks to deal with the stakeholders, but I would basically say just talking, explaining, and being patient.
That is fantastic. Thank you very much, Łukasz. This was an amazing presentation. And for all of you watching, please go give Łukasz some feedback. You can use the QR code to rate his presentation. All of you that said his presentation was the best so far, make sure it's reflected in the feedback. So that's it for today. Thank you very much, Łukasz.
Thanks a lot.